Today is Sunday, July 12th, 2020, and this is Flashpoint. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Flashpoint. I'm Jason Colthorpe. Devin is off this week. Michigan's Attorney General is part of a multi-state lawsuit against the U.S. Education Secretary, who is also a Michigander. Secretary Betsy DeVos has never shied away from the fact that she feels any student should be able to choose where they go to school, even if it's a private school, aided with public money. AG Dana Nessel is here to discuss the lawsuit that some believe could cost some Michigan school districts millions of dollars in funding if DeVos's plan is implemented. We'll also discuss the status of the Enbridge pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac that she is fighting to stop, and if she thinks it's the ecological disaster waiting to happen that others do. And our virtual panel is here today to talk about what every parent is worried about, and that is the start of the coming school year. It's only about 7 weeks away now, and at every level, heads are swimming with questions from administrators to teachers to parents and students. What will going back to class look like? Will kids be safe if they return? How are working parents supposed to juggle if districts implement a 2 days in class, 3 days at home schedule? What happens if a teacher tests positive? And where is all the money for all these extra measures going to come from? All that and more right now on Flashpoint. Our first guest this morning is the Attorney General for the state of Michigan, Dana Nessel, and we've got just a bunch of things to cover. And I want to start with the lawsuit now that you've joined with other attorneys general against the Education Department. And tell us about why you're suing. What is this lawsuit about?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on today. Really appreciate it. So generally speaking, what happened is that Congress passed the CARES Act, which many people have heard about. And the CARES Act specifically is targeting various things involving the COVID epidemic and how we're dealing with that as a society. So a large amount of that money, nationally, over $13 billion, was allocated to the states under Title I to allow for disadvantaged and low-income students to have access to learning. And to do so, if need be, for instance, remotely, for kids who were too poor to be able to afford things like laptops or iPads or Chromebooks or even internet access at all. And so $390 million of that was to be distributed to the state of Michigan. And that was to go again to provide for low-income disadvantaged students. But what Betsy DeVos did in terms of her guidance in the Department of Education was to divert many millions of those dollars away from the public schools and into the private schools, and basically to put into place a formula that isn't assisting the most disadvantaged students as it was intended to be. And in doing so, she contradicted the plain language as well as the intent of the CARES Act itself.
Let me jump in. A Department of Education spokesperson has commented on this. I just want to read it. She said, quote, "There's no reasonable explanation for debating the use of federal funding to serve both public and private K-12 students when federal funding, including CARES Act funding, flows to both public and private higher education institutions." The question, I guess, is why shouldn't this money help all students?
Well, it's supposed to be there to help disadvantaged students. That's the entire purpose of Title I. So when you're giving it to students that are in expensive elite schools that are more privileged and already have things like internet access and iPads and Chromebooks and whatnot, that circumvents the very reason for the distribution of money in the first place, was to help the poorest of our students, and not to give it to those who are not in need, to give it to those who this is the only way they would possibly have the funding available to be able to learn during the course of this global pandemic. And I feel very confident in our lawsuit. We have asked for a preliminary injunction. I believe strongly that it will be granted and that we'll be successful in this claim. But this is Betsy DeVos doing nationally as Secretary of Education what she's done for so many years here in the state of Michigan, and that is to divert money away from the public schools and into the private schools, and in doing so, hurt the poorest and most disadvantaged students in our state. And to do so, really without increasing the ability of our students to learn.
Yeah, and am I right to assume that to implement COVID safety features too, some of these public school districts that are already struggling need this money to do just that?
That's absolutely right. So we're talking about the money that was diverted away just in Michigan. That is PPE for 34,000 students. It's Chromebooks for 64,000 students who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. So it's very important that this CARES Act money go into the right hands and into the right places and into the right schools.
You were granted a restraining order against the oil company Enbridge a few weeks ago over its Line 5, which runs underwater in the Straits of Mackinac, but it was then rescinded. What's the status of that?
Well, it wasn't completely rescinded. So, obviously this is a 67-year-old pipeline that was never intended to run this long. 23 million gallons of oil that run through the straits every single day. And we know that there has been issue after issue after issue with Line 5, and it's in a precarious state. And we are constantly in a place where we are concerned about a spill or a rupture that would cause potentially the biggest oil spill in American history and be devastating to our states, really for the rest of the lives of anybody who's watching this program today. And so what we learned a few weeks ago is that there had been, I don't want to say an incident, it sounded like more than one incident that caused damage to both the east leg and the west leg of Pipeline 5. And, we were told about it. The state was notified by Enbridge, but then they went, after turning it off, they just turned it right back on without having consulted with the state and without having provided the information that we asked for. And so all we want to know is this: what happened? How did it happen? And why did it happen? We know that there was substantial damage that was done to both legs, and especially to the east leg of the pipeline, which now still remains shut down. And that one of the anchor supports, that there was some kind of significant force that was used to push that anchor support. We now hear from Enbridge that it's likely that there were probably a couple of different, boats that at some point would have been dragging something that caused the damage, and that would have been at least a couple different incidents. And we know that there was a tugboat that dropped an anchor that nearly ruptured the line, and we were very lucky to avoid that happening back in the spring of 2018. So that's at least 3 different incidents that we know about in just the last couple years. And that's why it's so important that we move forward with decommissioning Line 5 to ensure that we can avoid a catastrophic spill in this state.
Yeah, I know Enbridge is working with feds and saying it's trying to fix this. You want to end that line. Where does it go from here? What's next in that situation?
Well, at this point, Enbridge has been ordered by the Circuit Court in Ingham County. Judge Jamo has ordered that Enbridge has to provide the state of Michigan and the federal authorities with all the information surrounding the damage that was caused to the pipelines and any repairs that are needed. And of course, the east leg remains closed until further order of the court. But, essentially, we are asking that Enbridge continue to keep us advised and let us know exactly what the status is involving any of the damage, and to inform the court as well. And as that occurs, our lawsuit will move forward in an effort to decommission the line. It's the only way to prevent an absolute tragedy in this state from occurring. And what we've seen time and time again is that Enbridge has not been forthright and has not been honest about the condition of the line or the hazards to the line that apparently occur on a regular basis.
I have a minute to talk about police reform quickly. You released your first 7 proposals on it, including increased state power to suspend an officer, better records on discipline and misconduct that are public, and more than that. To implement that, do you have the budget, and do you also have the power to get around powerful police unions that might fight it?
Well, clearly there's going to have to be legislation that is passed by the state. I think everybody appreciates that, in terms of the reforms that we're proposing, we're not even proposing that police officers be held to a higher standard than other professionals, just the same standard. And that means that MPOLS, which is the state board that's in charge with regulating police officers and their licenses, should have the ability to suspend and revoke licenses and should have the ability to perform investigations into allegations of use of force. And then when those allegations are proven to have merit, to make that public and to have a public website, just the same way you do with other professionals, with attorneys and with doctors and dentists and CPAs. We think it's incredibly important. We don't think it'd be very expensive to do this, and we are asking for assistance from the state legislature.
Yeah, well, I know you're busy. Obviously, you're busy. We appreciate the time, Madam Attorney General. Thanks so much for being on Flashpoint with us.
Thanks for having me.